Welcome to the Citizen Media Expert Interview Series. Ashoka Changemakers, with the support of Google, launched Citizen Media, a global innovation competition to find solutions that use media to catalyze participatory citizenship. In this series, we'll connect with media experts from around the world to explore major trends, obstacles, and what lies ahead. Joining us today, we have Mr. John Lilly, partner at Greylock and former CEO of Mozilla. Mr. Lilly is also one of our judges for the Google-supported Citizen Media competition. Mr. Lilly, thank you for joining us.
All right, thanks for having me. Hi.
Before we really get into the weeds here, I'd love to hear a little bit about yourself and your current work. What is on your plate in the moment, and how does it relate to Citizen Media?
Well, I've just switched jobs. So in January, I joined Greylock as a venture capitalist. Greylock's had the good fortune to invest in some interesting companies on the consumer and enterprise side of the spectrum over the last 50 years. But lately, we've invested in companies like Facebook and Pandora, LinkedIn, Workday, Palo Alto Networks, so some of the most interesting companies in the world. Just before this, I was involved at Mozilla for a number of years. And Mozilla, as you probably know, is the open source nonprofit organization that makes Firefox, the web browser used by about 500 million people in the world. And so in being at a nonprofit, being in an organization that was sort of one of these hybrids, trying to change the world but also sustain ourselves through revenues, I learned a lot about how to create organizations that make meaningful, lasting change. I think it's different than Citizen Media, but over time I've become interested in how people get involved in sort of open source ways, sort of lightweight ways, in sort of the spectrum ranging from very, very lightweight involvement in civic organizations to very, very heavyweight, being involved in government directly. And so I've got a number of affiliations, Mozilla obviously, but also I was on the board of Participatory Culture Foundation that makes things like universal subtitles, and involved with the Knight Foundation from time to time, and a variety of things really.
Are there any of those technologies that you see having a greater potential for impact than others?
Oh, well, I think that right now we're in a period of massive change. I think obviously the rise of Facebook and the rise of LinkedIn means that we're all connected to each other, and you can get your ideas and your products spread massively to 1 billion people almost overnight. It's an amazing transformation. So I think the connectedness of all of us in our social graphs now, that we can do things together with our friends online, is a huge deal. Obviously, mobile is going to be a wave. Mobile and tablet is going to be a wave that's probably 10 times bigger than anything we've ever seen before on the desktop. The PCs, the way that the web has democratized development has been amazing. And now with Amazon and EC2, the ability to start startups with no infrastructure costs at all hardly is a huge deal. So I think we're seeing a bunch of big trends all hit right at the same time in a way that's, I think, pretty transformative.
So the bulk of your professional life has been in the technology industry in a variety of forms, and I'm curious, how have you seen it evolve? Many of us are tapping into technology, in the last few years, and I'll speak for myself on this one, but it's captivated me in how it can promote social change and social enterprise. But what have you seen?
Variety of things. I think that technology has always been with us. I mean, books, cars, even housing, construction techniques are all technology. I think what's happened in the last sort of 10 years or so is that computing technology has gotten very, very small and highly connected. What that means is that we carry computers around with us all the time. It means that you can have servers, machines located in Bangalore, or Beijing, or Bangkok that do things for you in Des Moines. What that means is that we've been able to create these big infrastructures very, very cheap, where somebody else like Amazon or IBM or Verizon pays the capital expenditures, and then you just have this world of hackers that create tools, create things that are useful. And it's very cheap now to create things, to try things, to see if things work, to see if consumer behaviors change, to see if the tools help people communicate or change the environment. And if they don't work, then you move on, and if they do work, then you start to scale them up. And so I think that, like I said, the connectivity of everything, of all of us now, the ability we have to carry these computing and connectivity around in our pockets, and just the dramatic fall in the cost to create these services is a huge deal.
You mentioned your work at Mozilla prior to your work with Greylock, and I would love to hear a little bit about your work there. Were there any challenges that stood out as you all were building out, and how have things changed there?
They're deeply challenged. Mozilla started at a time when Internet Explorer and Windows had something like 96% market share. So the first challenge was that we really shouldn't have existed at all. And it was a group of dedicated people that were there before me, but I helped over time. And they just leaned in and just wanted the world to be different than it was. So they leaned in and they committed and they built this thing before there were the distribution mechanisms of Facebook and iTunes Store and the like. Now we're in a different place. Now these massive distribution systems are in place, Facebook and Apple, plus the Android marketplace. And so I think that changes things quite a lot to have built-in distribution mechanism that really didn't exist before. I'm not sure if I'm exactly answering your question, but I think things are both similar, and that creating a compelling, good product that people love is the key, and quite different in that the distribution systems are all in place almost from day one for startups now.
You also serve on the board of the Participatory Culture Foundation, as you mentioned earlier, which is a nonprofit dedicated to supporting democratic media, if I've understood correctly. Tell me a little bit more about the kind of work that they do and the kind of change and innovation that they support.
PCF was about the idea that in technology waves, what happens generally is that technology starts closed, in that people who are tinkering around with things do their own innovation in-house. Over time, those things tend to open as the technology becomes well understood, and you start to get componentization and horizontal speciation. So you get people making motherboards, people making CPUs, people making operating systems. And then in the long term, the technology tends to close again, to close around networks of distribution. And I think we're seeing that on the internet now around Facebook and Twitter and Google as well. PCF was started at a time around probably 2005, 2006, when the worry was that as amazing and opening and democratizing as online video was, that the risk was that we would all move back towards a network where one or two nodes control distribution again. I think that with the benefit of hindsight, we now know those networks were YouTube to a large extent, Hulu to a lesser extent, and the networks that own the content, like TV content like ABC or HBO. And PCF was started as a way to let anybody be a broadcast network so that you wouldn't have this bottlenecking happen. The bottlenecking happens. We have tools now that let people do video distribution and video playback with something called Miro. The focus of the organization has really been moved towards something called universal subtitles, which gives anybody the ability to translate and subtitle videos from one language to another. So, between video distribution, video communities, and video subtitling, that's the work we do at PCF.
Very exciting work and very timely in so many ways. Going off of the work of Participatory Culture Foundation, just briefly, is there any advice that you would give to innovators who are trying to create these new forms of communication architecture and new forms of technology?
But I think the first thing is just to think big. I think that most of the most interesting companies and organizations that I see now are global from the first day. So being able to think about, when I went to Mozilla, when we initially looked at our data, our metrics, we said, well, what's our global market share? And you try to understand that. And what you realize is that as you start to get to scale, global market share isn't very meaningful. That there are different things that happen in Spain on a Sunday or a Catholic holiday versus Germany versus England on a bank holiday or whatever. And so you start to think about the world as not global so much as multi-local. So you really want to have global ambitions, but you want to think about how your technology, especially communication technology, how it spreads across languages and across borders. I just think that the more you can do and the more you can look at what's happened with Twitter and Facebook and Mozilla as they've expanded across languages, the better off you'll be. But just having global ambitions, it's a little bit like here at Greylock, we tend to obsess about two things. We tend to obsess about how good is the product. So does the product have a true north? And is it really good for the user? And the really clear use case is the first question. The second case is, does it have built-in distribution? So distribution, like I just talked about having access on Facebook and iTunes to 1 billion users now, and these built-in distribution platforms, but really understanding what in your product makes it so that the distribution will happen at increasing pace is the key. So good product, strong distribution, and then understanding sort of the multi-local nature of what you're building, I think are all pretty important.
I love this concept of not global but multi-local. Have you seen any really compelling examples of this?
Oh, sure. I mean, Mozilla, everything that spreads globally is like this.
Okay. So Mozilla, Facebook, Twitter, those types of platforms.
Mozilla, we ship Firefox in something like 92 languages, something like that. But we only, and that's the first day. Every day, as soon as Firefox 6 is released, it'll be released in 92 languages the same day. And the interesting thing is that people on payroll only do one of those. They only do the English one. And so we have 91 other localization communities around the world who do the work. And they do it because they're, in many ways, they're the ambassadors. They're for Mozilla in their region. They're ambassadors for their region to Mozilla. So they get things, well, one example is a guy named Naji, who I met a few years back, who was our Mongolian localizer for a number of years. And when I met him, he was living in Hanover, Germany. And we started talking about why he became the localizer. Because localizing products is a lot of work. And he was actually localizing our mail client, Thunderbird, and Firefox as well. And what he told me is that when he moved from Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia to Germany, to northern Germany, is when he became the localizer for our products. And it's because he wanted to be able to email email back and forth with his parents. And Thunderbird at the time wasn't in Mongolian. And so for him, being able to translate the software into Mongolian meant that he could communicate with his parents every day without teaching them to learn English or whatever to use the interface. It's an amazing thing to me because the time we talked, something like Mozilla had something like 100 million users at the time. There were maybe 10,000 users every day, max, of the Mongolian version that he made. And so that seems like a really small percentage, and it is. It's almost nothing in the numbers. But for Naji and for his family, it was everything. It was the difference between being online and not being online. The same is true for the crew that does accessibility for visually impaired people to use the browser, for example. And I would say that there are these multi-local aspects everywhere in the project. I think that every project that's gone global has some aspect of this as well.
Fascinating. It's something that as a user of the tool, we don't really think about as much, but it sounds like it's the real gauge of success.
Well, I mean, you only care that it's in your language, so all you care about is that it's in English.
Right.
If you're a Mongolian speaker, you really want to make sure it's in Mongolian.
One final question, sort of taking it back to the big picture. What kinds of trends do you see in the field of internet communication technologies? And do you think there are any ways that the general public or even people funding or supporting social innovators can help propel the field of citizen media forward?
I mean, I've already talked about the things that I think are huge around cloud and mobile, both being very, very important. The thing I'm worried about is sort of this, it's been written about, I don't know the guy's name, sort of this filter bubble that's happening. And previously we would have called it sort of narrowcasting, in that there are more and more people. The internet makes it pretty possible just to get opinions and sort of build an echo chamber of things you agree with. And so I'm pretty worried about that because I think that strong democracies in particular, but any strong citizenry is exposed to a variety of inputs and thoughts and use radically different ideas. And I'm a little bit worried that our technology now is allowing for such narrowcasting content that you can just live all day just listening to things you agree with. Things that make you comfortable. Mm-hmm. And I guess the challenge, and one of the challenges that I hope that a citizen media thing like Ashoka's investing in would help is how do you make people more comfortable with finding things that make them uncomfortable every day? How do you get people being more aggressive about finding things that move them out of their zone because it makes them better citizens or better humans? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I guess that's my own personal soapbox thing to look for. I think there's lots and lots of things as the news cycle gets shorter and shorter, and as real time happens, and as you learn about, like I learned about the earthquake in Japan from a friend of mine on Twitter who was in Tokyo in a building, a tall building, way before it was on the news. And that's all going to happen. I think we're all going to adjust to that kind of stuff. What I think we do need better solutions for is this narrowcasting, this filter roll stuff. And I haven't seen really good answers to that at all yet.
Well, hopefully we'll be seeing ideas around that in the coming years. And one of the exciting things about the field of citizen media is that it tends to be a forward-thinking and oftentimes self-correcting mechanism. So hopefully the pendulum will swing a little bit back. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Lilly, for your time and your thoughts. And we're very excited and eager to see the great things that you all do, and look forward to speaking with you again.
Yeah, I'm excited to be part of the group, and I appreciate the conversation.